Hello, thank you so much for coming to this video today. I really appreciate it. In this short little intro, I have to do an advertisement for my channel and then also a disclaimer that I'm going to start putting on all of the Cardano Auras. So please stay tuned for the disclaimer. But first, if you guys want to support the channel, the best way you can do so is just by liking the video and commenting your thoughts on this project down below. It helps me in the algorithm and it pushes these Cardano projects out further and wider because many people still think we're a ghost chain. Mark Cuban. But another way you can support the channel is just by delegating to Bloom. We have Bloom through Bloom 6. We're actually the 8th ever block minted by Stakepool on the Cardano blockchain. So we've been here from the beginning and we'll be here till your end. And to start the disclaimer, if you guys watched the last Cardano Aura podcast, I had Occam on. There was a bit of a confrontation because I got a little uneasy about the way he answered some of my questions. It felt a little dismissive and it felt a little disgenuine. And I want to say that I did not get that feeling this podcast. But just because I didn't get a feeling doesn't mean there's no fishy business. This project chooses to remain anonymous, but thank you to Pi who came on today. He didn't give out his real name, but he did show his face. And to give them some credit there, if I didn't have to show my face, because I actually just recently, got a gun to defend myself and set up cameras because I'm worried about, me being a public figure. So they are remaining anonymous. So that's a risk factor, but I see both sides, right? And I'm going to put this disclaimer on every Cardano Aura podcast. These projects that we're seeing, they're coming up, they're springing up, reminds me just like the ICO days. And a lot of those projects failed or took the funds in the ICO days. That doesn't mean anything negative towards SundaeSwap. They may be the DEX of Cardano, but there are many DEXs trying to be built on Cardano. And I feel as if because I'm giving them a platform, I have to give you guys this discretion. If you're going to invest in these projects, please do it with something that you're willing to lose. And what's cool about SundaeSwap, for example, is you actually delegate your ADA and pay them the rewards. They take 100% of the rewards, so you're not going to lose any funds other than, the rewards that you're getting. But I have a little bit of a disclaimer about that too. There were times in 2016, 2017 where I'd lose, half of a Bitcoin and think, that really sucks, but it was $200. I'll be okay. I'll be okay. It was just $200. But now looking back at that, I lost $25,000. And, your rewards cut in half every 6 years. So the inflation rate of ADA is going to be 2.5% versus 5% now. So you're giving up, the lion's share of the rewards that you're going to get on your ADA for a project. So if I find, maybe I want to support SundaeSwap, what I would do is I would, delegate a separate wallet with the amount of rewards that I'm willing to lose. So whatever percentage, because I would say probably 90% of these projects are going to fail. Does that mean 90% of them are going to rug pull? Probably not. But just be careful out there. Crypto still is the wild, wild west. Regulation hasn't come yet, but I really do hope you guys enjoy this podcast. I enjoyed it. I learned a good bit, and I hope you learn a lot too. So thank you so much, Pi, for coming on. And I hope this disclaimer, it's not targeted at you. I'm going to be putting it on every videos now. So I hope you guys enjoy this video. Hello. Thank you guys for clicking on this podcast today. Today, I'm with one of the lead developers of SundaeSwap. Can you introduce yourself for us?
Yeah, so my name's Pi. I am one of the co-founders and lead developers on SundaySwap. I have been programming for 21 years, and I've been in the crypto space since about 2010. The Bitcoin white paper got slashdotted, and I hopped on the Bitcoin Talk forums. I left the Bitcoin space in like 2012 or so for a little while, and then came back in 2017 and really fell in love with Cardano. And I've been following it ever since, and then was really looking for a way that I can contribute to the Cardano ecosystem and build something cool and needed. And so that's how I fell in with SundaeSwap.
Awesome. I mean, that's incredible that you've been a developer for 21 years, man. I mean,
21 years this August.
Yeah, there's a lot of knowledge that can be gathered in 21 years, and to be a part of the Bitcoin Talk forum, man. I was too young for that. I'm jealous. That's cool. Yeah. Man. So you kind of got to see the roots of blockchain and cryptocurrency.
Yeah. No. And I don't remember if I had any direct conversations with Satoshi, but I was definitely in threads where he was posting, and it was, looking back, it's kind of intimidating. Also, I'll add just in case, sometimes I have video problems or audio problems, and so I just would appreciate everybody being a little bit patient if something like that comes up. but hopefully it won't be an issue.
Yeah, and the video freezes, but the audio stays good, so I think it'll be just fine. And he's on Linux. I use Linux a lot, so I understand where he's coming from. People like Discord and people that build these software, they don't keep them as up to date on Linux as they would on Windows. So bear with us on that. So you said that you found Cardano in 2017. What attracted you about Cardano back in 2017? Have you had any history, with Ethereum? Have you had any history, building protocols, swap protocols or anything else?
Yeah. So when I'm going to go a little bit back, but when I found that white paper in like 2009, 2010 about Bitcoin, it made me feel a certain way as a programmer. I thought it was a incredible algorithm and solved a really unique problem. And there was like a certain emotion it stirred in me. And I've only ever felt that 2 more times. The next time was in somewhere around the 2014, 2015, when Ethereum was launching. And I was kind of bitter about crypto because I had kind of left before the big surge. And so I was like, whatever, crypto will be crypto, and I will kind of do my own specialization. I've been building big scalable web apps since. And kicked myself for missing out on that. And then I found Cardano, and it's the only other project. I've been reading about other projects, and Cardano is the third project that made me feel that same emotion. And so like that just really drew me into it. And then kind of watching the whiteboard videos with Charles Hoskin and the reading the papers, I felt the immense amount of authority and intelligence that was going into the project. And so that's what really attracted me to Cardano. I haven't built any swap protocols or anything like that in the past. I've played around on my local test environment and played around with Solidity and now Plutus, but I haven't built any distributed apps or anything like that. But I'm excited about breaking into this space, and I feel really confident in the team that we built.
How are you liking Plutus so far?
I really like it. The mindset shift from like the accounting-based model to the UTXO model, it was a bit of a shift, but they're totally equivalent at the end of the day, and it allows you to compartmentalize what you have to consider when you're writing code, and kind of deal with a smaller scope. And I'm a big fan of that as a developer, because it allows you to, a smaller set of things you have to consider means a smaller surface area for bugs. And so some of the like early APIs have shifted while they're getting things aligned, and that's been a little bit frustrating, but like that's totally understandable. Mm-hmm. They're moving fast to launch this, and they want to. So.
Yeah, I know where you're coming from. Back in the Stakepool days, every 2 weeks they're just like, oh, we got to redo something, because everything's different in the beginning. I know where you're coming from on that. Have you guys thought of, when creating SundaeSwap, was there any other protocols that you looked at other than Cardano?
Yeah, so and this is kind of a big source of confusion in our community. So when the project was very, very young, the other 2 co-founders didn't have kind of the breadth of technical skill to feel confident in launching on Cardano. And so their initial thought was to launch on BSC and then bridge over to Cardano. And the reason that they wanted to go that route was because the tooling and the infrastructure in place for like getting your token listed on Binance and things like that was a lot easier. And they just did not feel kind of confident in their own technical ability. They're like largely business guys. But then once we leveled up the technical skill and mainly brought me on board, we kind of started to look at that decision a lot more seriously. And we realized that like launching on Cardano, and we made this choice weeks ago, but launching on Cardano directly made a whole lot more sense for the Cardano community and for us as a project. The complexities, like they didn't realize this at the time, but I think the complexities of bridging from BSC over to Cardano would have been a nightmare, right? And it's not, I won't mention any names, but as we've seen with other high-profile projects, it's kind of ruffled some feathers, and we don't feel that it's the, what's in the best interest of the Cardano community.
Yeah, and I do agree with that. So a lot of my audience, is new to Cardano and new to crypto. So SundaeSwap is a DEX. But what is a DEX, and what value does a DEX provide for average users?
Yeah. So the modern financial world is built on this concept of allowing money that's sitting at rest to be doing valuable work for other people, right? And so this is where credit and loans come in. Is a bank will take the money that is in your savings account and give it to someone else so they can be doing something useful with it while you're not spending it. And more and more complex variations of that drive options and derivatives and stocks and all that kind of stuff. And classically, those things have gone through some kind of central issuing institution, the New York Stock Exchange or things like that. And so a DEX is short for decentralized exchange, and it allows the same kinds of things to happen at a high level that happen in normal finance, but on a decentralized, meaning there is no controlling authority manner, and allows people who kind of normally couldn't participate in those ecosystems, people who aren't certified brokers or aren't, can't sign up for a Robinhood account or any of these number of things that might block you from that space. It allows them to participate in this ecosystem and allows them to, not necessarily with our product, but with decentralized finance in general, build a credit score or take out a collateralized loan or things like that. And so SundaeSwap is going to be a what's called a swap protocol, which is effectively we are enabling two parties to exchange two assets. I no longer want ADA, and I want Sunday tokens instead. And so I need to find somebody else who no longer wants Sunday tokens and wants ADA instead, and allow us to swap that value. And so SundaeSwap will allow you to do that with effectively any of the tokens that will eventually be available and useful on the Cardano platform. Is that kind of a good summary, or is there anything else you want me to provide?
Yeah,
more
that was a good
detail
summary. From a Cardano perspective, just kind of follow the lineage of my videos, the way that I explain things. The Merry Hard Fork added the native token standard to Cardano. And when he's talking about swapping things, he means specifically on the Cardano protocol. How do we swap these native tokens, back and forth? Because right now we don't have a way to do that. If you want to go to Binance right now, or you want to go to any other exchange, they're using ERC20 standard, and they're using, obviously the standards for the relative cryptocurrencies, but for tokens like AGI, they're using ERC20 instead of using Cardano native asset. So by having, a DEX like SundaeSwap, it actually gives you the ability in a decentralized way to swap two tokens on the Cardano blockchain back and forth, whether it be Sunday tokens, Bloom tokens, or ADA, right? And one thing is where people get paid for providing liquidity, right?
Yeah, so the kind of mechanism, the way that it works in classical finance is there will be a big institution like a bank who aggregates a bunch of cash, usually through people's savings accounts or private investors or things like that. And then they will use that large sum of cash, we use the term liquidity in that space, to be able to efficiently kind of service those financial needs, issue loans and bonds and a bunch of complex instruments. One thing that's interesting about decentralized finance is that we're not only decentralizing access to those services, decentralizing the ability for people to get loans, decentralizing the ability for people to participate in an exchange like the New York Stock Exchange. We're also decentralizing the ability for people to participate in the business side of that. People can deposit their smart asset or their assets on a blockchain, and essentially serve as one little piece of a bank, right? And start earning an interest rate on that that is taken from the fees that we charge people to participate in those services. So when you take out a loan, you're paying an interest rate on that loan, and that interest rate, instead of going to the bank, is going to all of the people who provided the liquidity in the first place. One thing that like really fascinates me about being able to do this with smart contracts in particular is that the way I think of it is, instead of there being like a company that's running this, it almost becomes more a law of physics, in that, you know, we put these protocols and these contracts out there, and then they're just a thing that exists and that people can interact with. And you know, outside of the like the UIs that we're going to provide for that, and the kind of authority that comes from us having built it, we don't have any control over what those smart contracts do. They operate off of what the smart contract says, and so there's a lot more trust in this. And like I said in the blog post we released today, I firmly believe that in the same way that the US dollar used to be pinned to gold, and that's where it derived its value from a reserve of gold, crypto's underlying asset is trust. And the more trust that you can build, the more valuable that crypto asset that's tracking that trust.
Yeah, and that trust comes from, you know, code is law, and then those code are the smart contracts, you know, which we'll be getting
absolutely
in August from Goggen's release, you know. As you guys all know, we're all excited for that. So we've talked about it a little bit, but, you know, we'll start as, you know, what is SundaeSwap?
Yeah, so SundaeSwap is we're kind of we've seen the incredible hunger for these kinds of protocols, for swapping asset A for asset B in other spaces, mainly on the Ethereum blockchain. And so we want to bring that same value to the Cardano blockchain. And so we are starting very focused and very small, in that we are going to provide the ability to swap one asset for another. The ability to create these pools of liquidity and exchange them and track a price against that. And once we have that kind of foundation, once we have that ability, we're going to look at other products that we can build on top of that. So, you know, down the road, we might build a loan product that's built off of these liquidity pools. Or we might build an NFT marketplace that kind of augments that. But it's really important for us right now to stay very focused on one thing, and we're not trying to kind of dilute our efforts.
Yeah.
And that's because you know, Guggen is unknown, right? Like, smart contracts aren't even here yet, and so the less opportunities there are for plans to shift and suddenly, you know, make this product or that product infeasible, the better.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really hard to focus, you know, without knowing exactly what you can do. You know, I see were you guys a part of the private Plutus testnet with IOG?
So I don't think the Plutus testnet has launched, or if it was, then we weren't a part of it, but we are part of the Plutus Pioneers program. And what that has enabled us to do is we have all three of our backend developers have access to a private Discord where we can ask the developers questions directly, and we can kind of brainstorm and make connections with other developers in the ecosystem, right? So it's not just the IOG developers, but the other people building products in this space. And it allows you access to the YouTube videos that everybody else has access to, but the Q&A sessions that kind of either early on they followed, you know, they released the video and then they had a Q&A session and now they've swapped them, but we have access to those kind of live Q&A video streams.
What makes SundaeSwap different from, you know, PancakeSwap or Uniswap or even other protocols that are trying to build on top of Cardano?
Yeah. So the main thing for the first two that you mentioned is that we're on the Cardano blockchain, right? That's pretty obvious. The thing that it's hard for us to say what makes us different from other kind of swap protocols on the Cardano blockchain because none of us exist yet, right?
Yeah.
And so the details.
I was thinking
of
that as
protocol,
I said it.
No worries. So the details of the protocol of any of us, ourselves or YaySwap or any of those could change. So it's hard for us to distinguish ourselves from them. Um, we have some unique ideas in the space that kind of leverage the difference between the Ethereum transaction based model and the Cardano UTXO based model. I can talk about those, but I'm going to add the disclaimer that like we haven't committed to any details of the protocol because we believe that if we had done so already, it would be a mistake because we want to invest a lot in simulation and research and talking with other experts in the community. I think it would be a bit arrogant to assume that like before we even get all of the details about how Guggen is going to operate, we could have figured out the exact way to do things, right? And so we have some ideas that are really exciting and promising, but those details might change as we do kind of our due diligence. Yeah. And we believe that that's kind of the Cardano way, right? We've watched IOHK lag behind other blockchains because they're taking the time to think things through, and that's worked out phenomenally for them.
Yeah, that's very fair. You don't see all of on top of researching and running simulations like you said. You don't see all that you can do with Plutus yet. As a Stakepool operator, I experienced this myself a year ago, and we mentioned a little bit earlier. Month to month, there were more tools or there were less tools. Month to month, relative to the release cycle or the whole thing that was going to be released. Some things would be taken out, some things would be added in. So it's hard to say exactly what you do and commit to something without that being set in stone, because the actual Pioneer testnet, the Plutus testnet, is coming later this month. So, so you guys chose to do an ISO funding method, but I have one question before we jump into that. Will you ever ask for Project Catalyst funds as well?
We're considering it. Just from one of the huge sources of value that Catalyst provides, other than funds, is the community input and the like really structured and well thought out way to kind of catalyze, pun intended, a project and force them to kind of up the ante in their project plan. And make that public to the community and garner feedback from that community. And so, like, even outside of the funds that we would receive through the Catalyst Fund, we see that as very valuable. One thing, and we can go more in depth in this later, is with the ISO, we are going to be budgeting out what we need to run a business. Running a business is fairly expensive, but we're going to be budgeting that out. And if our ISO is exceeding those expectations, and we plan to scale back the ISO to meet that budget, to return some of those rewards to our users, and to kind of commit to, we're trying to run a business and we need money to build a DEX, but we don't want to over fundraise in a sense, right? That poses its own risks. So in the same way, when we set our kind of our ask for the Catalyst program, we'll be operating under a similar strategy. We'll be the amount that we're asking for will be kind of commensurate with what we need to fundraise, and not the maximum that we can ask, right?
Yeah. Great explanation. I appreciate that. So will your protocol be open sourced?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, the way that the blockchain works kind of requires that. We need to publish at the very least, the bytecode of our smart contracts onto the blockchain itself in order for the validators to run them. So anybody would be able to take that and reverse engineer it into some semblance of the code that we have written. Second, like I've said before, a big part of how we are successful in the crypto space in general is by building trust, right? That's where, in my opinion, the token that we'd be issuing would derive its value, is in our community's trust in the protocol that we're building. And so in order to do that, we need to release those smart contracts. And then finally, we plan to get audited, right? Like that is almost a given in this space, and it's very important to us to get a really high quality audit, because I don't know about you, but I wouldn't sleep well at night if I hadn't had my work double and triple checked, and it was responsible for millions of dollars worth of people's money. So likely as part of that audit, we will publish the results and publish the code. That being said, for kind of competitive reasons with other DEXs in the space, there may be like small delays before we release it or things like that. But definitely before we actually launch, that will be available and able for anybody to review.
Awesome.
Along with the simulations that we've run and things like the results of those simulations to kind of build that confidence.
Yeah, I'm happy to hear that. I see so many projects coming up, and I think, there are going to be projects that fail and projects that succeed, but by things being open source and by us working together, I think we'll have better protocols in the end. So I appreciate you guys taking that approach. So let's get into the ISO, the initial stake offering. To give my opinion real quick, I think this is a very new and unique idea. And I think it was about a week and a half ago, I had Occam on my podcast, and they did something called an IDO, and that's another way to fund it. And they use the ERC20 blockchain, which if you guys watch the podcast, I had an issue with that because it seemed like, they're using a different blockchain where you have to pay hundreds of dollars in fees, and then at the same time stating they're bringing value to ADA. So the first thing that I like with the initial stake offering is that it's actually on the Cardano blockchain. It's using Cardano's tools to raise funds for a project. So can you explain a little bit more on what an ISO is?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and you mentioned that you have a bunch of people new to this space, so I'll kind of walk through the history of how we got to ISO and what all these three-letter acronyms are. So in the classical financial space, often a company will want to raise a whole bunch of capital to kind of start a new project. And in order to do that, one of the options available to them is what's called an IPO, and that stands for Initial Public Offering. And that's where they sell their stock for the first time on an open market. And so they raise a bunch of capital from that, and then the reason people want to buy that is because they believe that in the long run, the share of stock that they're buying is going to provide them value, either through appreciation or through stock buyback. So eventually companies buy back a bunch of that stock. And if the price has increased since, then the market as a whole has gained value, or through dividends, right? So they pay a regular fee back to the people who own the stock, and so this is that principle of like money at rest isn't doing anything, and so how do we allow somebody else to use our value for kind of productive economic output, and like make it do work is what we say. So back in 2017, that model inspired an ICO, initial coin offering, where some crypto project sells a bunch of their coin initially to raise a bunch of funds, and then people who are buying those coins hope that they have value in the future through either their utility or their kind of ability to store value and appreciate over time. So that had a bunch of problems, right? So most notably is the company that was running the project that was running that ICO got a big lump sum, and there were a bunch of high-profile projects where the creators then disappeared, and they disappeared with all that money, right? Making the token worthless. Another problem is there were some projects where kind of dark investors or mysterious shady investors kind of swept in and bought up huge chunks of the token, and they didn't necessarily have the best interests of the product in mind or the project in mind. They were just looking to kind of get rich, and they dumped the tokens later, and it kind of killed the project. And so out of that evolved what's called an IDO. So kind of in the last year or two, projects have been doing what's called an IDO, which is initial DEX offering. So that's initial distributed exchange offering. And they partner with some other marketplace and say, hey, in order to build that trust, you handle the details of this sale, right? So Binance will sell the token for them, or it'll be listed on Uniswap or something like that, right? And often there's like a lottery system attached to that, where in order to break up the dark investors, there's a cap on how much you can buy, and you get chosen kind of out of a hat of whether you can participate or not. And that solves some of the problems with an ICO, but it still leaves the community feeling kind of a little bit frustrated, I think, because there's this project that they're excited about and they can't participate. And so the ISO is what we think is the next, or one of the next evolutions of that. I anticipate a big delta of spreading out of these different models as people come up with creative ways to raise funds for their project on Cardano. But the one that we've chosen is an ISO. That stands for Initial Stakepool Offering. And the idea is we leverage the existing mechanism on the Cardano blockchain known as stake pools. I'm sure your frequent viewers are familiar with the Bloom stake pool, for example, which is the Cardano blockchain has a roughly 5% interest rate baked into it. The stake pool operators run kind of validating nodes. This is the equivalent of like a Bitcoin miner. And their ADA serves as votes in an election for who gets to mint each block. It would be impractical to have everybody, millions of people using Cardano to run a full stake pool. And so in order to build an ecosystem of research around which stake pools are reliable and trustworthy, they incentivize people who are just holding ADA and don't want to run a stake pool to delegate their votes, their ADA, to a stake pool operator. ADA doesn't leave their wallet, and the stake pool operator gets more votes when it comes time to decide who mints each block. So overall, the pool earns more rewards, and then that gets split up among more people. And so those people who delegated get a portion of those rewards. So we're leveraging that. Very simple idea. We run a stake pool, and instead of the normal kind of 2% fee that a stake pool sets in order to kind of pay for the servers and the administration of it, we're going to set a 100% fee. So we'll be collecting all the ADA, and the people who delegate to us will miss out on that 5% per year interest. Works out to be like around 0.08% interest per epoch. And so they'll be giving up on that small amount of rewards. And in return, each epoch will look at kind of all of our delegators, use the blockchain to find a payment address for them, and send them Sunday tokens in return at an exchange rate of 8 cents per Sunday token. So if you help us earn 2 ADA, and ADA is valued at $2, we've earned $4 USD. And so that divided by 0.08, despite having the name Pi, I'm bad at arithmetic. So I don't know. I can't tell you how many Sunday tokens that would be, but you would earn roughly 12.5, or not, sorry.
Yeah. So
12.5 per dollar that we earn
fluctuates with the price of ADA.
Yes.
So when is that calculated? Is it just on the epoch payment?
Yeah, we will take a snapshot of the price at the end of the epoch, and at the end of the epoch for which you accrued the rewards.
So 3 epochs later, then, that snapshot is where the transition is going to occur. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Same with any of the changes we make to how rewards are calculated. We'll make sure that those have the same 3 epoch delay. So this is a big experiment. We don't know how successful it will be. There's lots of concerns around oversaturation, and what if whales jump in, and what if we start.
That's my biggest concern is saturation. What you do if, let's say you got the big bucks and you're starting a private pool. You got 64 million ADA and you want to start a private pool. What you do is you set the fees to 100% so nobody joins. But you guys have somehow found a model where you can set the fees to 100% and everybody wants to join. So how are you going to manage, let's say, because I think that you guys are going to do well. You've built up a lot of of people that are excited about this. What happens if you guys get 100 million? So just a real quick introduction to the video today. I wanted to say thank you to our sponsor, Pilot Pool. He's actually a good buddy of mine, and he actually has a great message that he wants to share with you today, and it is move crypto off exchanges. If you have your ADA on an exchange, it is not your ADA. When you have your ADA on an exchange, if that exchange were to go down, you're not able to withdraw your funds. If they were to get hacked, you lose all of your funds, and at the same time, you also decentralize the network by moving your ADA off funds. And the sponsor of this message is Pilot Pool, and you can go to adapilot.com right here, adapilot.com, for more information. He's a mission-driven stake pool, and he donates 10% of all pool fees to Multiple Sclerosis International Federation. And he's the member of the Mission Driven Pool Alliance, MDP, and he's also part of the single owner and operator community pool with over 1 million pledge and a 0% margin. And the lifetime performance has been 6.3%. So thank you so much for sponsoring this video. You help the channel keep running. Thank you, Pilot Pool. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, so that's something that we've been thinking about from very early on. I'm a bit of a pessimist, so I don't know if we'll reach saturation, or if we do, it'll be kind of several epochs down, in my opinion. But it's very possible that 10 minutes out the gate, we could reach saturation. And so we've got a couple of different options that we're evaluating for how to deal with that. This kind of leads into one of the reasons that we're really excited about an ISO. And there's a bunch that I didn't get to mention, but I'll go into those in a second. But one of the reasons is that it's not a big bang process like an ICO, right? In an ICO, if there's some problem with how they are distributing those rewards, they have 30 seconds to fix that problem to make it more fair. Otherwise, all the tokens are sold. You're out of luck. With an ISO, it happens epoch to epoch, and so we can adjust the rewards model. We can adjust the number of pools we run. We can make some changes to bring it closer to fairness. It's impossible to get perfect fairness, I think, because at the end of the day, a big whale can just split their ADA into 10,000 wallets, and then it just looks like 10,000 delegators.
Yeah.
So I'll walk through each of the things that we're considering. So one thing that we're considering is the simplest is spinning up a second stake pool. It's not our favorite option, but it would be kind of the quickest to allow people to jump in. And because of kind of the saturation mechanics in the Cardano blockchain, so for those who don't know, you don't earn any additional rewards past 63 something million ADA delegated to you. And so your rewards in an absolute sense don't start decreasing, but your rewards per ADA, or your interest rate, basically starts decreasing. And so a really quick way, if there is somebody who drops a single $100 million delegation to us, or 100 million ADA delegation, is to spin up more stake pools, because each one that we do requires that whale to have multiplicatively more assets to saturate those pools. Not our most attractive option. The second option we're considering is changing the reward calculation so that it operates geometrically on how much you contribute rather than linearly. And so that means that the more and more ADA that you delegate, the less and less rewards that additional ADA adds to you. So that kind of smaller wallets are disproportionately rewarded with Sunday to kind of spread that token
interesting idea.
As wide as possible. That's not perfect because... Go ahead.
So I like that, and I like that you guys are looking at these in different ways, because, that's how I could see, you keeping that pool to not be saturated, Yeah.
It's not perfect because at the end of the day, somebody could just split their wallet into 100 different wallets.
Different thousands and whatever that max rate is, and then send 1,000 ADA to each wallet and then just delegate them all separately,
Right. And so the third option we're considering that we're honestly most excited about, or at least personally, is partnering with other stake pool operators for them to run kind of Sunday certified pools. So, for example, you and I could partner, and you would run you have Bloom 1, Bloom 2, Bloom 6. You could have a Bloom Sunday, and you share a portion of what you earn from that pool with us, and then we give you a portion of Sunday to send out to your delegators. And we really like that idea because then we're contributing to the ecosystem of reliable, kind of trustworthy stake pool operators, and we're still fundraising for ourselves, but we aren't creating this draw or away from other people's stake pools. There's still a little bit because we would still operate one pool at least for ourselves, but we're at least like letting people who are concerned about the decentralization of Cardano still participate in our project, but do so in a way that doesn't give us a big chunk of ADA. All that being said, there's 32 billion ADA out there. 76% of that is being staked. I think it's pretty unlikely that we draw like a threatening amount of ADA away from those other stake pools.
Yeah, I agree with that. So you mentioned the 8-cent value, and I want to kind of, because if you've been in crypto for a little bit, the best way to think of things is in market caps, right? So an 8-cent value, and it was 200 million tokens?
Yes.
So that puts you at a $15 million market cap.
Yeah, I think a little bit above that, yeah, but around that.
So then following that, let's look at I saw that there's an inflation rate and then also a quarterly burn rate. So what is like kind of the net inflation or the net burn, over time?
Yeah. So first I will say we arrived at that 8-cent number based on kind of the private interest that reached out to us. A bunch of people have reached out offering kind of to be private investors and buy a bunch of Sunday. And we haven't accepted any of that, but it did give us a baseline for what kind of the big money is valuing this at, so that we could at least start with an exchange rate. And so that's how we arrived at that number. We didn't just kind of pull it out of thin air. And then I wanted to get that out of the way. Can you repeat your question?
Yeah, no problem. So I saw that there's a burn quarterly and then also an inflation rate. So another question to add on to that is, where does that inflation go on top of, what's net inflation or net burn?
Yeah. So this digs into a little bit of the technical details. Is that okay?
Yeah.
I don't want to kind of...
Yeah, that's okay, cool. I like the technical details, but I try to shimmy away a little bit,
Yeah. So the inflation and burn rate refers to the eventual protocol that we are going to build. And we're like I said before, we're not committing to any details. We may theoretically end up with a fixed supply. We may end up with like different parameters for the inflation and burn rate as we kind of do simulations and figure out what creates the healthiest ecosystem around SundaeSwap. The reason that we kind of right now are favoring that inflation and burn is because it's been really successful in PancakeSwap and Binance and like other projects like that. That being said, the token that we are going to be issuing with these airdrops is a fixed supply, 200 million. We are minting them in such a way, using kind of the minting policy that we can never mint that particular token again. And then what we will do is once we've figured out the actual protocol that we want to build, and those inflation and burn rates are controlled by smart contracts and not by us directly. Again, going back to that, like we want trust. We want people to be able to trust the code as law.
Yeah.
Once we've figured out those details, then any smart contracts that we build, we'll have one smart contract that allows you to burn Sunday V0 and mint Sunday V1. It has those tokens built into it, right? So there will be a 1-to-1 conversion rate for that. And then any contracts that you would usually pay for with Sunday will also allow you to provide Sunday V0 tokens and just burn and mint them on the spot. And so that kind of provides us an upgrade mechanism so that we can mint one fixed supply token and then upgrade to kind of the monetary policy that we want once we have picked the right option out after kind of extensive research.
Okay. So to explain how it works, you guys chose your minting policy to be one mint, and then you now don't have the ability to burn or mint anymore.
Yeah, I mean, technically that will be true once we launch. We haven't minted the token yet.
Okay.
But yeah,
so from my perspective,
will...
when you actually mint a token, you set a period on how long you can mint more tokens or burn more tokens. So I was just curious about that period. That's why that I brought that up.
Yeah, that will be our current runbook. So have it for 1 hour, like a 1 hour window, while we're going through this process.
Yeah.
And we're actually not going to be like publishing the official token and saying like this is the one we endorse as Sunday until we've confirmed that window has passed and that there still is 200 million, just to cover any kind of sneaky bases.
Okay, cool. So my next question, and we went over a little bit, is how many pools will you open up? And it's kind of, so let's say you do go with route 1, and because, so one thing I learned from Charles Hoskinson is incentives, right? Incentives are so important. You guys are focusing a lot on game theory. You have to have incentives for people to, do an action. Whatever you incentivize people to do, then they're going to do it. So if you incentivize people to provide liquidity to your protocol or incentivize people to stake to your pool by giving them Sunday tokens, then that's what they're going to do, right? So for me, the issue, and this is like the issue that I see with the ISO model, right? It solves the Ethereum model, but with ISO models, and maybe you guys won't choose to do this, but other projects, for incentive, the next direct incentive is obviously to just make more money, right? So I really think that I'm pessimistic like you are. I didn't think Bloom was going to do well at all. I wanted to be at one pool in K value. I think you guys are going to do very well. And, your obvious incentive is to just open up a second pool and then a third pool and then a fourth pool. And then I can't say anything about that, right? I mean, I run 6 pools. It's not like I'm talking down on that. I'm just curious, that if you guys do go that direction, the first method, what are you looking at as far as, how much funds do you need? How many pools do you need? Just because you guys, I thought it was 75%. That you guys were charging. I mistaken that. So I did some math on, and that, so incentives are very, very important. And one of the issues with the ICO model and also the IDO model is, what is the incentive to actually build the protocol after you get the funding, right? If you, like EOS, for example, raised billions upon billions of dollars, and more money doesn't really mean better stuff, right? At Cardano, that's one of Cardano's things, right? And with one pool at 75% fee, and so these numbers are going to be a little off. This is at $2.32 and 75% fee on the pool, not 100. That is, so per year, it's about $5.8 million. And then we can do some quick math because I did 75%. So theoretically, to get the real number, we're just going to have to multiply that by 1.33, which would put us at, I would say, about $8 million a year. And then per epoch, every 5 days, and this is with one pool, 80K a year is at 75%, or 80K an epoch, 80,000 US dollars at 232 at a 75% fee. So if we times that by 1.33, you're going to be just over $100,000 every 5 days. And then for the monthly, it's going to be over, I want to say about $700,000 a month. And, I'm not saying that to talk down, because I understand, that businesses are expensive, but I'm saying that like for my audience, to show what, because people don't know actually what pools earn, especially at such high fee rates, So I just wanted to give those numbers out and then, kind of ask you, what, if you do choose the first route, what is enough for funding for your project, and obviously you're not going to have exact numbers because, there's often more expenses in business when you first start them than you initially realize. But, what is your estimate where you guys are now in your current place?
Yeah. So really good question, and something that we've thought about a lot. There's a lot of reasons that we can't release our exact budget. But we are budgeting out for 1 year. And when we reach 75% of that budgetary fundraise, we are going to be looking at reducing our pool fee to make that commitment to the community that we're not here for a cash grab, right? We would much rather, instead of opening a second pool, partner with stake pool operators like yourself, right? And because we're going to be, you set the fee rate on that pool, and we split funds, that fundraise is going to be much less, right? So ultimately, one of the benefits of the ISO that we really like is that it is not a kind of flashbang fundraise. We're not going to raise $100 million and then disappear. Mm-hmm. It happens epoch to epoch. And if we're incredibly successful, then we'll be raising a fair bit of money. But the community can choose epoch to epoch whether we have kind of met their standards for kind of reliability and transparency about what we're doing, right? And they can rug pull those the continued funding of the project back. Mm-hmm. I'm going to broaden your question a bit as well, because I think it's really important, is like, even if we are good actors, we're kind of breaking the ice on this new funding model. And what about actors that come later, and that
because that
other
incentive
problem, in the ecosystem.
It's like, we're building this new big project, we're going to be giving you tokens that we just created that have no value at this current stance for your real value, and this pool's full, here's the second one, this one's full, and it's just continually. I don't think that this is going to have a big issue towards decentralization, because how many pools are you really going to fill up tops? You know what I mean? I'm not worried about it specifically from the decentralization aspect. It's just, but I see where you're coming from. Your answer to that was very reasonable. Epoch to epoch, the consumers, the people that are trying to support your project, do decide whether they want to continue to do that or not. And that is a big pro over the IDO model and the ICO model, right? Because there's still that incentive issue, and there's still the incentive. There's still no incentive for you guys to really build the project other than, keeping the stake there, right? So,
so I'm going to finish up my thoughts from the last question, which is, this is a problem for future ISO models. And like, one of the big things that we're doing, and the reason we're being very transparent and taking this very carefully, is we want to serve as an example to the community for what a ethical ISO looks like, so that when future projects come along and do have that problem, people's spidey senses start tingling, so to speak. People can say, hey, this differs from this ISO that went really well and that I felt really good about. Maybe I should be a bit more skeptical about this, right? Maybe, like, if this project only needed to run one stake pool to kind of fund their operations, or one stake pool plus partnerships, why does this one need 7, right? And so we really want to kind of set that barometer for people on how to look out for like what makes an ethical ISO and what doesn't. And then I had a follow-up. Can you remind me of your question that you just asked?
It wasn't really, there was no question. It was really just like kind of a statement, on ISOs. And, I really think that this is a good discussion. And I appreciate you coming on here today to have this discussion, because you guys really did create a new funding model. And, even if someone in the community or a certain part of the community thinks something that you do is unethical, it seems as if you're willing to, talk about it. which is good because you guys are creating something new. You are creating, a new funding model, and you seem to be open-minded and, taking community opinions as far as, designing the ethical way to actually do this new ISO model. And I mean, as far as pros and cons go, I mean, it's on the Cardano blockchain. Great pro there over the IDO model being on Ethereum, and like you said, the epoch to epoch, having the ability to pull your funds out, and also risk too. Oftentimes people are submitting a portion of their funds instead of just a portion, of their rewards, so there's lower risk there. That's another pro for the ISO model. So yeah, I think you guys really did create something pretty awesome. And I think that this is kind of going to ricochet out, other up and coming projects on Cardano for years to come.
Yeah, we're really, really excited about it. We're not the, you said this is a unique idea, but that's actually not true. There's been lots of people who kind of have had similar ideas, and we originally got this idea from kind of talking with our community in the first place.
Who?
So it's not necessarily unique in that we're kind of some special snowflake in having come up with it, but as we thought about it more, I think there's even one project in the space that's kind of doing it as a marketing thing, right? They run a stake pool with 0 fees, and they give out a token, kind of just for you to play with a token. It seems like,
yeah.
And so, like, we're not necessarily the first to realize that this is possible, but we hope to be the first to show what's possible with it.
Yeah, well, we at Bloom do that too. We pay people Bloom tokens, for delegating to Bloom, and we're waiting for smart contracts, for the payments. But we're going to pay all the way back to the first epoch of Shelley. We're going to pay out Bloom tokens. But you say it's not unique, but the way that you're doing it is unique. Charging 100% fee and only giving the tokens back, and then also the name ISO. To me, that's unique. Maybe there is somebody else that thought of it, but to actually do it, run with it, and execute it. You guys are the first so far that I've seen.
Yeah, we're very excited. And I remembered what my thought was earlier. You were saying that, like, once we've raised money from an epoch, right? Even if it's, X amount there, you asked what was the incentive to, like, actually deliver and build on the project. And that's a big part of why I, came on this podcast. And let me be a little bit vulnerable with you. I'm a very private person, and in general, and I this is my first kind of thing that I'm doing publicly and going on and doing something like this. And it was really important to me that people like have a face to attach to SundaeSwap and to and just like be really human and honest and open with you and with your community and with our community.
Yeah. Yeah, and I followed the same model at Bloom. I wasn't very, although I'm a YouTuber, you think I'm a very public person. I don't go to too many social gatherings. I sit at home, I study Cardano, and I make these damn videos, right? So I know exactly where you're coming from, and I actually did the same thing for Bloom Pool. I wanted to show, transparency. I'm the guy who's running this, and, if I take your rewards, you can come get me, so... I appreciate you. I appreciate you coming on this podcast today. The one last question I had for you, and then also I can give you, some time if there's anything that you want to state. How do you actually plan on sending out these tokens?
Yeah. So that is actually, for those who don't know, we kind of made a big announcement this morning. We announced that the actual stake pool is going to go live on May 25th, and we released a 4,000 page blog post on Medium that describes a lot of these details.
Yeah, I'll link that down below, and I read that. I just wanted it in video format.
Yeah. So if my question is insufficient to anybody out there watching, please go read that, and please go hop in our Discord. We're always there answering questions. But that's one of the really tricky problems that we had to solve, because the way that the Cardano blockchain defends against what I call dust attacks, which is theoretically some malicious actor could create a new token with the maximum supply and then create one transaction that paid that to 100 million addresses, just random addresses. And then these are now 100 million unspent transactions that the stake pool operators have to keep in their database and validate against. And to defend against that, any native token any kind of bundle of native tokens has to be attached to at least one ADA, right? So a transaction output cannot have less than one ADA in it, whatever else it has in it. And so that meant that if we were going to be sending out, a tenth of a Sunday token, then we'd have to send one ADA with it, right? And so that really was a big existential threat to this model at first. Mm-hmm. So we have a phased design for how we're going to be distributing those. I want to say up front, everybody is going to get every little iota of Sunday that you are entitled to. I'm going to say something that people often have misinterpreted as us saying, well, if you don't earn enough Sunday, then you won't get it or whatever. But every little kind of fraction of a penny you will eventually get. What we're going to do at first, starting technically June 14th, when our first airdrop goes out, is if you have earned 60 Sunday or more, that works out to be us earning $2 or 2 ADA. If you've earned 60 Sunday, then we will airdrop it to you. If you've earned less than that, because you're delegating, it works out to be if you've delegated 2,500 ADA or more, then you'll get something in the first airdrop. And that's just an estimate. These numbers are hard to calculate with kind of the variability in producing blocks and stuff like that. But roughly, yeah.
So how much ADA did you say you need per epoch to be airdropped every epoch?
Roughly, based on kind of our calculations, 2,500 ADA. Or yeah, if you delegate 2,500 ADA, then there is a good chance that you will earn at least 60 Sunday tokens. If you earn less than that, less than 60 Sunday tokens, or then we will accumulate that balance epoch to epoch until you have at least 60, and then we will pay it out. This is the way that a bunch of Bitcoin and Ethereum mining pools operate, is they won't send you every fraction of an Ethereum. They'll wait until you have an amount that makes it worthwhile for the kind of transaction fees.
That makes perfect sense. It has to make financial sense to do so, because it's not even just 1 ADA too. When you actually do the transaction, it's 1.6 ADA. Because I send out Bloom tokens all the time.
Yeah, we can send out everybody's Sunday at once, and so there's a fee for the whole transaction, 0.17, and then 1 ADA for each delegator, right? And so we that left us in an awkward position. But we're really excited to announce that after some brainstorming, once smart contracts go live, we actually have a pretty clever solution, which is that from what we've read, there just has to be attached to 1 ADA. So once smart contracts go live, we'll be writing a smart contract that we kind of deposit rewards into that allows people to claim those rewards. And they can provide that 1 ADA. So it's essentially you pay yourself 1 ADA, and on that loop, as it goes through the smart contract, it picks up the Sunday.
That's exactly what we're doing as well.
Yeah, so even a tiny amount of Sunday you can collect if it's valuable to you.
Cool.
And then our one last addition to that, our ideal model, and we're given the details that aren't out right now, we're not sure if this is possible, but if it is, we would love to build a smart contract that calculates and pays out the rewards directly on the blockchain from the from delegator information, right? And so if we have access to, in these validator scripts that we write for the smart contracts, if we have access to the delegator information and we can compute on chain what your reward should be, we plan to release a smart contract that does that too.
Yeah, and I actually just heard that there will actually be the ability to delegate to a smart contract. So there's some more for you to think about.
Yeah.
But I appreciate you coming on, man. I want you to come on again when more comes out, as more information comes
Absolutely.
out, as you get information from these simulations, and we can even get a little bit more technical next time, because we did our intro. So yeah, man, I thought all of your responses were very reasonable, and I think this ISO thing is it's the start of something big. So
Yeah, we're really excited. I'm really excited that you had us on. Really love your content, and hopefully we can launch a Bloom Sunday someday.
Hell yeah, man. But if you guys enjoyed this video and you made it all the way till the end, please, please, please comment SundaeSwap down below. I always love seeing the end of the video ones. It makes me feel warm in my heart. But I hope you guys have a good rest of your weekend, and if you're watching this tomorrow, a good rest of your week. I do Monday AMAs every 3 p.m. or every Monday 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where you can come and ask me your Cardano questions. You can ask me any questions you had about this podcast today. It's a live stream. It's an AMA. If you guys enjoy this, I hope to see you there tomorrow. But thank you so much. See you guys.